The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns of Clarence House as Camilla Parker Bowles stood before her ornate dressing room mirror, her reflection revealing a woman caught between determination and uncertainty. The events of the previous evening still echoed in her mind like ripples across a still pond. She had attended Lady Margaret's charity gala, expecting nothing more than the usual pleasantries and polite conversation that filled her social calendar. Instead, she had witnessed something that would change the trajectory of her carefully ordered life forever. Lady Margaret Thornfield, a longtime friend of the royal family, had always been known for her exquisite taste in jewelry. Her annual charity auction featured pieces donated by various members of high society, each item carrying its own story and significance. The evening had progressed smoothly until the auctioneer presented a particular piece that caught Camilla's breath and held it captive. The necklace was extraordinary in its simplicity, yet breathtaking in its elegance. 3 strands of perfectly matched pearls cascaded gracefully, anchored by a stunning sapphire and diamond clasp that seemed to capture and reflect every light in the room. The auctioneer's voice had carried across the hushed crowd as he described the piece. This magnificent pearl and sapphire necklace was graciously donated by the Duchess of Cambridge, Catherine Middleton. The piece originally belonged to Diana, Princess of Wales, and was gifted to the Duchess by Prince William on their wedding day. The Duchess has chosen to donate this precious heirloom to support tonight's cause, demonstrating her commitment to charitable work. Camilla felt her heart race as she absorbed this information. The necklace before her was not just beautiful. It was a tangible connection to the royal family, specifically to the late Princess Diana, whose memory still cast a long shadow over the House of Windsor. More intriguingly, it represented Catherine's willingness to part with such a meaningful piece, suggesting either remarkable generosity or perhaps something more complex beneath the surface. The bidding had been fierce, with several prominent collectors vying for the piece. Camilla found herself raising her paddle almost without conscious thought, driven by an impulse she couldn't quite understand or explain. When the hammer finally fell, she was the successful bidder, having paid a sum that would have made her financial advisor wince. As she accepted congratulations from fellow attendees, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just made a decision that would ripple far beyond the confines of that elegant ballroom. Now, standing in her dressing room with the necklace lying in its velvet-lined box before her, Camilla contemplated the significance of her impulsive purchase. The pearls seemed to glow with their own inner light, and the sapphire clasp appeared almost hypnotic in its deep blue brilliance. She understood that wearing this piece would be more than a fashion choice. It would be a statement, though she wasn't entirely certain what message she intended to convey. The upcoming garden party at Buckingham Palace presented the perfect opportunity to debut the necklace. These events were carefully orchestrated affairs where every detail mattered, from the arrangement of the flowers to the guest list composition. Members of the royal family would be in attendance, along with diplomats, celebrities, and influential figures from various walks of life. It would be a stage where her choice to wear Diana's former necklace would not go unnoticed. As she lifted the necklace from its box, the weight of it in her hands felt substantial, not just physically, but symbolically. Each pearl seemed to carry with it a piece of history, a fragment of the complex narrative that surrounded the royal family. Diana's presence still lingered in these pearls, her grace and tragedy intertwined with their lustrous surface. Catherine's decision to part with the piece added another layer to the story, creating questions that Camilla found herself pondering as she held the necklace up to the light. The morning light streaming through her windows caught the sapphire clasp, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the walls of her dressing room. Camilla found herself thinking about the events that had led to this moment. Her relationship with the royal family had always been complex, marked by years of speculation, criticism, and gradual acceptance. She had worked tirelessly to establish her own identity within the framework of royal protocol, supporting numerous charitable causes and conducting herself with dignity despite the constant scrutiny. Her lady-in-waiting, Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell, knocked softly on the door before entering with the morning's correspondence. Eleanor had served Camilla faithfully for over a decade, witnessing both her triumphs and challenges with unwavering loyalty. The older woman's sharp eyes immediately noticed the necklace in Camilla's hands, and her expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "That's a remarkable piece, ma'am," Eleanor observed carefully, her tone neutral but her eyes curious. She had been present at the auction and was well aware of the necklace's provenance and significance. Camilla met her gaze in the mirror. "Indeed it is. Lady Margaret's auction was quite successful last evening. This piece will help fund several important charitable initiatives." Eleanor nodded, understanding the unspoken complexity of the situation. "Shall I prepare your outfit for the garden party, ma'am? I believe your navy ensemble would complement the pearls beautifully." The suggestion was practical, yet loaded with implication. Eleanor had an impeccable sense of appropriateness, and her recommendation indicated that she supported Camilla's apparent decision to wear the necklace. This silent endorsement gave Camilla additional confidence in her choice. As Eleanor began preparing the selected outfit, Camilla continued to examine the necklace. The craftsmanship was extraordinary, with each pearl perfectly matched and strung with meticulous precision. The sapphire and diamond clasp was a work of art in itself, featuring a design that was both classic and timeless. She could understand why Diana had cherished this piece and why William had chosen to give it to Catherine on their wedding day. The afternoon sun was beginning its descent when Camilla's private secretary arrived with the final details for the garden party. The guest list was impressive, featuring several foreign ambassadors, prominent business leaders, and various members of the extended royal family. Most significantly, Prince Charles would be in attendance, along with Prince William and Catherine. The prospect of wearing Diana's former necklace in their presence added a thrilling edge to the upcoming event. Camilla spent considerable time that afternoon considering the potential reactions her choice might provoke. Some might view her decision as inappropriate or presumptuous. Others might see it as a gesture of respect toward Diana's memory. Still others might interpret it as a bold statement of her own position within the royal hierarchy. The ambiguity of potential interpretations was both exciting and nerve-wracking. As evening approached, Camilla began her preparations for the garden party. She selected her makeup carefully, opting for a look that was elegant yet understated. Her hair was arranged in a classic style that would showcase the necklace to its best advantage. When Eleanor helped her into the navy dress, the outfit felt like armor, preparing her for whatever reactions the evening might bring. The moment finally arrived when Camilla lifted the necklace and fastened it around her neck. The pearls felt cool against her skin, and the weight of the clasp at the back of her neck served as a constant reminder of the significance of her choice. Looking at herself in the full-length mirror, she felt transformed. The necklace elevated her entire appearance, adding an element of regal sophistication that seemed to emanate from the very history embedded in those pearls. Eleanor stepped back to admire the complete ensemble, her expression one of quiet approval. "You look magnificent, ma'am. The necklace suits you perfectly." Camilla turned slightly, watching how the pearls caught the light with every movement. "Thank you, Eleanor. I believe tonight will be quite memorable." The drive to Buckingham Palace was filled with anticipation. Camilla found herself touching the necklace occasionally, reassuring herself that it was secure and properly positioned. The weight of it against her neck felt increasingly natural, as if the piece had been waiting for this moment to fulfill its destiny. As her car passed through the palace gates, Camilla caught sight of other guests arriving for the garden party. The scene was elegant and refined, with ladies in their finest dresses and gentlemen in formal attire. The setting was perfect for her debut of Diana's necklace, though she remained acutely aware that every choice in such an environment carried potential consequences. Upon entering the palace grounds, Camilla was greeted by the familiar sight of the immaculately maintained gardens. The event was already in full swing, with guests mingling on the perfectly manicured lawns while servers circulated with champagne and canapes. The atmosphere was refined yet relaxed, exactly the kind of setting where subtle social dynamics played out beneath the surface of polite conversation. Camilla made her way through the crowd, acknowledging greetings and engaging in brief conversations with various guests. She noticed several people glancing at her necklace, their expressions ranging from admiration to curiosity. Some guests seemed to recognize the piece, their eyes widening slightly with surprise or intrigue. As the evening progressed, Camilla found herself growing more confident in her choice. The necklace felt right, as if it belonged with her in this setting. The conversations flowed naturally, and she began to relax into the familiar rhythm of royal social events. Then, across the garden, she spotted Prince Charles deep in conversation with a group of foreign dignitaries. He was impeccably dressed, as always, his posture reflecting decades of royal training and natural authority. Camilla had known Charles for years, their paths crossing frequently at various social functions. But tonight felt different somehow. As if sensing her gaze, Charles looked up from his conversation, his eyes meeting hers across the crowded garden. For a moment, time seemed suspended as their gazes locked. Camilla saw his eyes travel down to her necklace, and she watched as recognition dawned on his features. His expression shifted subtly, revealing surprise, curiosity, and something else she couldn't quite identify. The moment stretched between them like a bridge across the garden party chaos. Other guests continued their conversations. Servers moved through the crowd, and the string quartet played softly in the background. But for Camilla, everything else faded into insignificance. Charles's attention was focused entirely on her, specifically on the pearls that now adorned her neck. She saw him excuse himself from his group and begin moving in her direction through the crowd. Each step he took seemed deliberate and purposeful. Camilla felt her heart rate increase as she realized that her bold choice to wear the necklace was about to face its first and perhaps most important test. The pearls seemed to grow heavier around her neck as Charles approached, but not with the weight of regret. Instead, they felt like a talisman, a source of strength and confidence that would carry her through whatever conversation was about to unfold. The evening sun cast a golden glow over the garden party, creating an almost magical atmosphere that seemed perfectly suited for the moment that was about to change everything. Prince Charles navigated through the garden party crowd with practiced ease, his diplomatic smile never wavering as he exchanged brief pleasantries with guests along his path. Yet beneath the polished exterior, his mind raced with questions about what he had just witnessed. The pearls around Camilla's neck were unmistakably familiar, carrying with them a flood of memories both cherished and painful. As he drew closer, Charles could see the necklace more clearly. The 3 strands of lustrous pearls caught the evening light beautifully, and the sapphire clasp sparkled with an intensity that seemed to draw attention like a magnet. He remembered Diana wearing this very piece on numerous occasions, how it had complemented her elegant neck and added grace to her already striking presence. The sight of it now, adorning another woman entirely, created a complex mixture of emotions he was still processing. Camilla watched Charles's approach with growing awareness that this conversation would be pivotal. She had prepared herself for various reactions, but seeing the actual moment unfold brought a unique tension she hadn't fully anticipated. The other guests around them continued their conversations, seemingly oblivious to the drama that was about to play out in their midst. When Charles finally reached her, he paused for just a moment, his eyes once again taking in the full impact of the necklace before meeting her gaze directly. "Mrs. Parker Bowles," he said warmly, his voice carrying the refined tones that marked his royal upbringing. "How lovely to see you this evening. That is truly an exquisite necklace you're wearing." Camilla felt a subtle thrill at his opening words. His comment about the necklace was clearly intentional, an acknowledgement that he recognized both the piece and the significance of her choice to wear it. "Your Royal Highness," she replied with a graceful curtsy. "Thank you for the kind words. I acquired this piece at Lady Margaret's charity auction last evening. It's remarkable how certain items seem to call out to us, isn't it?" Charles nodded thoughtfully, appreciating the subtle way she had referenced the necklace's recent acquisition while leaving space for deeper interpretation. Indeed, some pieces do seem to have a way of finding their rightful place. Lady Margaret's auctions are always quite spectacular. I trust the evening was successful for the charitable cause. Tremendously so, Camilla confirmed. The generous donations from various contributors made it possible to raise substantial funds. It's wonderful when personal treasures can serve a greater purpose. The conversation appeared casual to any observer, but both participants were acutely aware of the layers of meaning in their exchange. Charles found himself studying Camilla more intently than he had in their previous encounters. There was something different about her tonight, a confidence and presence that seemed enhanced by the pearls around her neck. I understand my daughter-in-law contributed several pieces to the auction, Charles continued, his tone remaining conversational while testing the waters of their discussion. The Duchess was indeed very generous, Camilla agreed. Her contribution demonstrated remarkable charity and grace. It takes a special kind of person to share such meaningful items for the benefit of others. Charles recognized the diplomatic skill in her response. She had acknowledged Catherine's generosity while subtly suggesting that the necklace had found an appreciative new home. The complexity of the situation was not lost on him. His former wife's necklace, donated by his daughter-in-law, now worn by a woman whose presence in his life had been steadily growing more significant. As they talked, other guests occasionally approached to greet Charles, but he managed these interactions efficiently while maintaining his focus on Camilla. She noticed his attention didn't waver, and she felt increasingly confident that her bold choice had achieved its intended effect. The string quartet began playing a particularly lovely piece, and Charles gestured toward a quieter area of the garden where they could continue their conversation with more privacy. Camilla accepted his subtle invitation, and they strolled together past beautifully maintained flower beds and ornamental fountains. The gardens looked particularly magnificent this evening, Camilla observed as they walked. There's something magical about these summer evenings at the palace. They do indeed, Charles agreed. I've always found great peace in gardens. There's something about the combination of natural beauty and careful cultivation that appeals to me. Perhaps it's the way they represent the best of both spontaneous growth and thoughtful guidance. Camilla understood that his words carried meaning beyond their surface discussion of horticulture. She sensed he was drawing a parallel between gardens and relationships, both requiring patience, care, and the right conditions to flourish. They paused near a particularly stunning rose bed, the flowers releasing their perfume into the warm evening air. The setting was romantic in its beauty, though neither acknowledged this directly. Charles turned to face her more fully, his expression serious yet warm. I must say, that necklace suits you remarkably well, he said, his voice carrying a note of sincerity that went beyond mere politeness. There's something about certain pieces of jewelry. They seem to enhance not just one's appearance, but one's entire presence. Camilla felt a flutter of excitement at his words. Thank you. I must admit, when I saw this piece at the auction, I felt an immediate connection to it. Sometimes we're drawn to things for reasons we don't fully understand at first. I understand that feeling completely, Charles replied, his gaze meeting hers with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. Sometimes the most meaningful acquisitions in life come from following our instincts rather than our careful plans. The conversation was moving into territory that felt both thrilling and slightly dangerous. Both participants were aware that they were discussing more than jewelry, yet neither was ready to abandon the metaphorical framework that allowed them to explore deeper feelings safely. A server approached with a tray of champagne, providing a momentary interruption that allowed both to collect their thoughts. Charles accepted 2 glasses and offered one to Camilla, their fingers brushing briefly as she took it. The small contact sent an unexpected spark of awareness through both of them. To successful charity auctions, Charles proposed, raising his glass with a slight smile. To finding treasures in unexpected places, Camilla countered, her eyes meeting his over the rim of her glass as they toasted. They sipped their champagne in comfortable silence, both processing the implications of their exchange. The evening had taken on a quality that neither had anticipated, charged with possibility and the excitement of discovery. "I noticed Prince William and the Duchess arrive earlier," Camilla mentioned carefully, testing how Charles might react to discussion of the necklace's previous owner. "Yes, they're here somewhere," Charles replied easily. "Catherine has been quite busy with her charitable work lately. I admire her dedication to various causes." Camilla noted that he spoke of Catherine with warmth, but without the particular intensity he had been showing toward her. This observation gave her additional confidence that she had not misread the situation developing between them. "The royal family's commitment to charitable work is truly inspiring," Camilla said. "It must be rewarding to see the positive impact that can be achieved when personal resources are directed toward meaningful causes." "Indeed it is," Charles agreed, "though I sometimes think the most valuable contributions aren't always the most obvious ones. Sometimes it's about bringing fresh perspective to familiar situations or finding new ways to honor existing legacies." Again, Camilla sensed layers of meaning in his words. He seemed to be acknowledging that her wearing of Diana's former necklace could be viewed as a way of honoring the past while creating something new in the present. As they continued their stroll, they encountered various other guests who greeted Charles with the deference due to his position. Camilla was included in these interactions naturally, and she began to sense how she might fit into the social dynamics surrounding the royal family. The thought was both exciting and daunting. The evening light was beginning to fade, casting a golden glow over the garden party. Paper lanterns had been lit throughout the grounds, creating pools of warm light that added to the magical atmosphere. The combination of natural beauty, elegant company, and meaningful conversation created a perfect backdrop for the connection that seemed to be developing between Charles and Camilla. "I should probably make my rounds to the other guests," Charles said eventually, though his tone suggested reluctance to end their conversation. "Royal duty calls, as it always does." "Of course," Camilla replied, understanding the demands of his position while feeling disappointed that their time together was drawing to a close. "Thank you for such a delightful conversation." "The pleasure has been entirely mine," Charles assured her. "I do hope we'll have the opportunity to continue our discussion soon. Perhaps you might be interested in visiting the gardens at Highgrove sometime? I'd be happy to show you around personally." The invitation was clearly significant, representing a desire to see her again in a more private setting. Camilla felt her heart skip as she processed the implications. "I would be honored," she replied warmly. "I've heard wonderful things about your gardens there." "Excellent. I'll have my secretary arrange something," Charles said, his smile genuine and pleased. "Until then, enjoy the rest of your evening." As he moved away to fulfill his social obligations, Camilla remained by the rose bed for a moment longer, processing everything that had transpired. The necklace around her neck felt like a tangible symbol of transformation, having apparently catalyzed a connection she hadn't dared to hope for. The rest of the garden party passed in a pleasant blur. Camilla engaged in conversations with various guests, but her mind kept returning to her exchange with Charles. She noticed him across the garden several times during the evening, and each time their eyes met, she felt the same flutter of excitement and possibility. When she finally departed the palace that evening, settling in her car for the journey home, Camilla reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in the span of just 24 hours. The impulsive decision to bid on Diana's necklace had set in motion a series of events that seemed to be leading somewhere entirely unexpected and thrilling. As her driver navigated through the London streets, Camilla touched the pearls at her neck one final time before carefully removing the necklace. The evening had been everything she had hoped for and more. The bold statement she had intended to make with her choice of jewelry had clearly been received and appreciated by the one person whose opinion mattered most. Looking ahead to the promised visit to Highgrove, Camilla felt a sense of anticipation unlike anything she had experienced in years. The necklace had served its purpose beautifully, opening a door to possibilities that had previously existed only in her most private imaginings. The foundation for something significant had been laid that evening, and Camilla Parker Bowles found herself eagerly anticipating where this newfound connection with Prince Charles might lead. The pearls that had once adorned Princess Diana, then briefly belonged to Catherine, had now become the catalyst for a relationship that promised to reshape everything. 3 weeks after the garden party, Camilla found herself standing before the entrance to Highgrove House, Prince Charles's beloved country estate in Gloucestershire. The morning sun filtered through ancient oak trees, casting dancing shadows across the gravel drive. Her heart raced with anticipation as she adjusted her simple yet elegant outfit, chosen carefully to be appropriate for walking through gardens while still maintaining the sophisticated image she had cultivated since that transformative evening at Buckingham Palace. The invitation to visit Highgrove had arrived within days of the garden party, written in Charles's distinctive handwriting on official letterhead. The personal nature of the note, with its warm tone and specific mention of showing her his prized organic gardens, had left no doubt about his genuine interest in developing their acquaintance further. Eleanor Hartwell had helped her prepare for this visit with characteristic thoroughness. They had researched Charles's passionate involvement with organic farming and sustainable gardening practices, ensuring Camilla would be well informed about subjects dear to his heart. The preparation felt like studying for an examination, except the stakes were far more personal and emotionally significant. A distinguished butler greeted Camilla at the door, his demeanor formal yet welcoming. "Mrs. Parker Bowles, His Royal Highness is expecting you in the morning room. If you would please follow me." As she walked through the corridors of Highgrove, Camilla absorbed the atmosphere of the house. The decor reflected Charles's personal taste, combining traditional English country house elements with touches that revealed his various interests and passions. Photographs, paintings, and personal mementos created a sense of warmth that contrasted with the more formal royal residences she had visited. Charles was standing near a window overlooking the garden when she was announced. He turned with a genuine smile that immediately put her at ease, his informal attire of tweeds and country boots suggesting a relaxed day ahead. "Camilla," he said warmly, crossing the room to greet her. "How wonderful to see you again. I trust your journey down was pleasant." "Perfectly lovely," she replied, accepting his kiss on both cheeks in the continental style he favored. "The countryside is absolutely beautiful this time of year. I can understand why you spend so much time here." "This place is my sanctuary," Charles admitted, his voice carrying deep affection for his home. "I hope you'll find it as restorative as I do. Shall we begin with coffee? Or are you eager to see the gardens immediately?" "I'm entirely at your disposal," Camilla replied diplomatically, though her curiosity about the famous gardens was evident. Charles laughed, a warm sound that revealed his relaxed mood. "I can see you're being polite, but your eyes are already drifting toward the windows. The gardens it is, then. I promise the coffee will taste even better after we've worked up an appetite walking." They stepped out onto a stone terrace that overlooked the most spectacular private gardens Camilla had ever encountered. The landscape stretched before them in carefully orchestrated sections, each area devoted to different aspects of Charles's gardening philosophy. Organic vegetable gardens flourished alongside heritage flower borders, while woodland walks promised peaceful contemplation among mature trees and natural wildlife habitats. "This is absolutely breathtaking," Camilla said sincerely, her admiration evident in her voice. "I had no idea the scope was so extensive." 27 years of development," Charles said with obvious pride. "When I acquired Highgrove, much of this was conventional farmland. Every garden, every path, every planting represents a philosophy I've developed about working with nature rather than imposing our will upon it." As they walked along the gravel paths, Charles began sharing his knowledge with the enthusiasm of someone discussing a beloved passion. He explained his commitment to organic principles, pointing out companion plantings that naturally deterred pests and enriched soil. Camilla found herself genuinely fascinated by his expertise and the obvious joy he derived from this work. "You see this area here," Charles said, stopping beside a thriving vegetable garden. "We've never used a single chemical fertilizer or pesticide. Everything grows according to natural cycles and relationships. It requires more patience and observation, but the results are far superior in both taste and environmental impact. Camilla knelt to examine the soil, letting it run through her fingers. I can actually feel the difference. It's so rich and alive. My own gardening efforts seem quite amateur by comparison. Nonsense, Charles replied warmly. Every gardener starts with curiosity and develops through experience. The key is developing an eye for what plants are truly telling us about their needs and relationships with their environment. They continued their tour, Charles explaining various sections with increasing animation. His passion was infectious, and Camilla found herself asking informed questions that clearly pleased him. The conversation flowed naturally between practical gardening techniques and broader philosophical discussions about humanity's relationship with the natural world. In the herb garden, surrounded by the intense fragrances of rosemary, thyme, and lavender, their conversation took a more personal turn. I must admit, Charles said, pausing beside a particularly magnificent lavender border, I didn't expect to find someone who would appreciate these gardens quite as enthusiastically as you seem to. Most visitors are polite, but few truly understand what I'm attempting to achieve here. What you've created here goes far beyond gardening, Camilla observed. This represents a complete philosophy of life, doesn't it? About patience, respect for natural processes, and the courage to pursue your convictions despite criticism. Charles looked at her with surprise and evident pleasure. That's remarkably perceptive. Yes, exactly. These gardens reflect everything I believe about how we should approach life, with respect for tradition, openness to wisdom from the past, and commitment to leaving something valuable for future generations. The deeper meaning in their exchange was unmistakable. They were discussing far more than gardening philosophy, and both recognized the significance of finding such compatibility in their fundamental values and approaches to life. They paused beside a small pond surrounded by carefully placed stone seating. The water reflected the sky and surrounding plantings, creating a scene of perfect tranquility. Charles gestured for Camilla to sit on one of the stone benches, joining her as they watched dragonflies skimming across the water surface. I've been thinking about our conversation at the garden party, Charles said carefully, about treasures finding their rightful places and following instincts rather than careful plans. Camilla felt her pulse quicken, but maintained her composure. It was a memorable evening. I've thought about our discussion frequently since then. Have you? Charles asked, his voice carrying a note of satisfaction. I'm pleased to hear that. I find myself curious about you, Camilla. There's something about your presence that feels both comfortable and exciting simultaneously. The admission was significant, representing a level of personal revelation that went well beyond polite social interaction. Camilla felt a thrill of triumph mixed with genuine affection for this complex, passionate man beside her. I feel the same way, she admitted honestly. Our conversation that evening awakened something I hadn't expected. There's a depth to you that's quite remarkable. Charles turned to face her more directly, his expression serious yet warm. I've reached a point in my life where I've grown tired of superficial interactions. I find myself drawn to authenticity, to people who possess both strength and genuine warmth. You demonstrated considerable courage wearing that particular necklace to the garden party. Courage? Camilla asked, though she understood his meaning. Absolutely, Charles confirmed. You made a statement that could have been interpreted various ways, some potentially controversial. Yet you carried yourself with such grace and confidence that it became elegant rather than provocative. Camilla smiled at his analysis. I simply felt drawn to the piece. Sometimes we have to trust our instincts about what feels right, regardless of what others might think. Indeed we do, Charles agreed, his gaze holding hers with increasing intensity. I find myself thinking we might have more in common than I initially realized. The afternoon continued with tours of the remaining garden areas, but the dynamic between them had shifted into something more intimate and purposeful. They shared personal stories, discussed their various interests and concerns, and discovered numerous areas of compatibility that surprised them both. In the kitchen garden, Charles picked fresh vegetables for their lunch, explaining his commitment to eating seasonally and supporting local producers. Camilla found herself charmed by his hands-on approach and obvious pleasure in the simple act of harvesting food he had grown himself. There's something profoundly satisfying about this direct connection to our food, Charles explained as he selected perfect tomatoes. It grounds us in natural rhythms that modern life tends to obscure. I can imagine, Camilla agreed. There's something honest about it. No pretense, no artifice, just the fundamental relationship between effort and nourishment. Their lunch was served on the terrace, featuring the vegetables Charles had harvested along with other items sourced entirely from the estate. The meal was simple yet elegant, prepared by Charles's chef according to recipes that emphasized the natural flavors of fresh, organic ingredients. As they ate, their conversation ranged across numerous topics, from art and literature to current events and social causes. Camilla discovered that Charles possessed not only extensive knowledge, but also thoughtful opinions and genuine curiosity about her own perspectives. "I'm impressed by your work with literacy programs," Charles said, referring to one of Camilla's charitable commitments. Education and access to reading are fundamental to human dignity and opportunity. "Thank you," Camilla replied. "I believe books have the power to transform lives, particularly for people who have been denied educational opportunities. There's something magical about watching someone discover they can read." "I couldn't agree more," Charles said warmly. "Perhaps we might find ways to collaborate on educational initiatives. I've been developing some programs focused on sustainable agriculture education for young people." The suggestion of future collaboration felt significant, implying a desire to integrate their lives and interests more deeply. Camilla felt another surge of excitement about the possibilities that seemed to be opening before them. After lunch, they walked through the woodland areas of the estate, following paths that Charles had developed to showcase the natural beauty of mature trees and indigenous wildlife. The setting was romantic without being overtly so, providing a perfect backdrop for increasingly personal conversation. "I must ask you something," Charles said as they paused in a clearing surrounded by magnificent oak trees. "That evening at the garden party, when you chose to wear Diana's former necklace, did you anticipate the reaction it might provoke?" The direct question about Diana represented the first time either had acknowledged the complex history that surrounded them. Camilla considered her response carefully. "I was aware the choice carried significance," she admitted. "I suppose I hoped it might be interpreted as a gesture of respect rather than presumption." "And what if I told you it was interpreted as something else entirely?" Charles asked, his voice gentle but serious. "I would be curious to know your interpretation," Camilla replied honestly. Charles stepped closer, his expression intense yet tender. "I saw it as a declaration of confidence, a woman comfortable enough with herself to honor the past while creating something new in the present. I found it remarkably attractive. The moment hung between them, charged with possibility and the recognition that they had moved well beyond the boundaries of casual acquaintance." Camilla felt her breath catch as she processed both his words and the implications of his proximity. "I'm glad," she said softly, "because that confidence came from recognizing something special was beginning, even if I wasn't entirely certain what form it might take." Charles reached out to touch her hand gently. "I think we both recognize what's happening here, don't we?" Camilla nodded, unable to find words adequate to express the complexity of emotions she was experiencing. The afternoon at Highgrove had confirmed what the garden party had suggested. They were embarking on something that could transform both their lives entirely. As the day drew toward its close, both knew that whatever happened next would require careful consideration and courage. The foundation had been established for something significant, but the path forward would need to be navigated with wisdom and determination. The pearl necklace had served its purpose beautifully, but Now the real work of building a relationship would begin. 6 months had passed since that transformative afternoon at Highgrove, and the relationship between Charles and Camilla had evolved from tentative exploration into something deep and enduring. Their connection had weathered the initial scrutiny of the press, the careful observation of royal household staff, and the complex dynamics of integrating their previously separate social circles. The pearl necklace that had catalyzed their romance now held a place of honor in Camilla's jewelry collection, though she wore it sparingly and only on occasions of particular significance. Each time she fastened those lustrous strands around her neck, she was reminded of the bold choice that had changed the trajectory of her life so dramatically. On this particular December evening, Camilla stood once again before her dressing room mirror, this time preparing for what would likely be the most important social event since their relationship had become public knowledge. The annual Christmas reception at St. James's Palace would bring together members of the extended royal family, foreign dignitaries, and prominent figures from British society. More significantly, it would mark the first formal occasion where she would appear publicly as Charles's acknowledged companion. The invitation had arrived several weeks earlier, written in Charles's hand and explicitly naming her as his guest for the evening. The gesture represented a clear statement of his intentions regarding their relationship and his willingness to present a united front to the world. Eleanor Hartwell moved efficiently around the dressing room, preparing various elements of Camilla's ensemble for the evening. The older woman had proven invaluable during the transition period, offering both practical support and emotional stability as Camilla navigated her new role in Charles's life. The emerald dress arrived from the designer this morning, Eleanor informed her. I've had it pressed and steamed, and I believe it will be perfect for this evening. The color will complement the pearl necklace beautifully if you choose to wear it. Camilla had indeed planned to wear Diana's former necklace for this crucial evening. The choice felt appropriate on multiple levels. It represented the confidence that had brought her and Charles together, and it demonstrated her commitment to honoring the complex history that surrounded their relationship while moving forward with dignity and grace. Yes, I think tonight calls for the pearls, Camilla agreed. They've brought me remarkable fortune so far. Eleanor smiled at the comment, understanding the significance of the necklace in her employer's personal mythology. Over the months of their developing relationship, Charles had frequently commented on how stunning the pearls looked on Camilla, often suggesting she wear them for important occasions or intimate dinners at Highgrove. As Camilla began her preparations, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed since that impulsive decision at Lady Margaret's charity auction. The relationship with Charles had exceeded her most optimistic expectations, revealing depths of compatibility and genuine affection she had never anticipated finding at this stage of her life. Their courtship had unfolded with careful attention to both private intimacy and public propriety. Charles had introduced her gradually to various aspects of royal life, from formal protocol to the subtle dynamics that governed interactions within the royal family. Camilla had proven herself adept at navigating these complexities, earning respect for her intelligence, discretion, and natural grace. The afternoon sun was beginning to fade when Charles arrived at her home for their drive to St. James's Palace. He entered her drawing room with the easy familiarity that had developed between them, looking distinguished in his formal evening wear. His face lit up with obvious pleasure when he saw her in the emerald dress and pearl necklace. "Absolutely magnificent," he said warmly, crossing the room to take her hands in his. "You look radiant this evening. Are you ready for what promises to be quite an eventful night?" "As ready as one can be for such occasions," Camilla replied with a smile. "Though I must admit to some nervousness about the level of attention we're likely to receive." "Perfectly understandable," Charles assured her. "But remember, you've already proven yourself capable of handling far more challenging situations than this. The important thing is that we face whatever comes together." The drive to St. James's Palace provided time for final preparations and mutual reassurance. Charles briefed Camilla on several of the evening's most distinguished guests, offering insights that would help her navigate conversations with foreign ambassadors, prominent business leaders, and various members of the aristocracy. Lord Pemberton can be quite pompous, but he's genuinely knowledgeable about agricultural policy, Charles warned with amusement. Lady Whitmore has strong opinions about everything and isn't shy about sharing them. The Belgian ambassador has a delightful sense of humor once you get past his initial formality. Camilla appreciated these insights, understanding that Charles was sharing the kind of insider knowledge that would help her succeed in her new role. The gesture demonstrated his commitment to ensuring her comfort and success within his world. As their car approached the palace, they could see the impressive gathering already in progress. Elegant carriages and luxury automobiles lined the approach, while photographers captured images of arriving guests. The scene represented the pinnacle of British social hierarchy, and Camilla felt the weight of the occasion settling upon her shoulders. "Remember," Charles said softly as they prepared to exit their vehicle, "you belong here. You've earned your place through your own merits and character. The pearls you're wearing tonight are simply a beautiful accompaniment to the remarkable woman who wears them." The reassurance was exactly what Camilla needed to hear. She touched the necklace briefly, drawing strength from its familiar presence, then took Charles's offered arm as they made their entrance into the palace. The reception hall was brilliantly decorated for Christmas, with magnificent floral arrangements and twinkling lights creating an atmosphere of festive elegance. The guest list was impressive, featuring individuals whose names regularly appeared in international headlines alongside members of the royal family and British establishment figures. Charles and Camilla's entrance caused a subtle but unmistakable shift in the room's energy. Conversations paused momentarily as guests absorbed the significance of their public appearance together, then resumed with increased animation as people processed the implications of what they had witnessed. Queen Elizabeth herself approached them within minutes of their arrival, her expression warm and welcoming as she greeted both Charles and Camilla with obvious approval. The monarch's public acknowledgement of their relationship represented a crucial endorsement that would influence how others perceived and interacted with them throughout the evening. "Mrs. Parker Bowles," the Queen said graciously, "how lovely to see you this evening. That is a particularly beautiful necklace you're wearing." "Thank you, Your Majesty," Camilla replied with a perfect curtsy. "It's an honor to be included in such a magnificent evening." The exchange was brief, but significant, establishing the Queen's approval of Camilla's presence and setting a tone that would guide interactions for the remainder of the evening. As they moved through the reception, Charles and Camilla operated as a seamless partnership. He introduced her to various guests with obvious pride, while she engaged in conversations that demonstrated her intelligence, humor, and genuine interest in others. The pearl necklace caught the light beautifully, serving as a conversation starter and symbol of her confidence in this elevated social setting. Prince William and Catherine were present at the reception, and their interaction with Camilla provided one of the evening's most watched moments. Catherine's reaction to seeing her former necklace was gracious and warm as she complimented Camilla on how beautifully the pearls suited her. "That necklace has found a wonderful new home," Catherine said sincerely. "It suits you perfectly, and I'm delighted to see it being worn and appreciated." The generous comment from Diana's necklace's previous owner helped dispel any potential awkwardness about the situation while demonstrating Catherine's own grace and emotional maturity. William's subsequent warm conversation with both Charles and Camilla further confirmed the family's acceptance of their relationship. Throughout the evening, Camilla found herself increasingly comfortable in this rarefied environment. The months of careful preparation and Charles's patient guidance had prepared her well for the complex social navigation required at such events. She engaged knowledgeably with foreign diplomats about international affairs, discussed charitable work with various philanthropists, and even held her own in conversations about art and literature with several distinguished academics. The highlight of the evening came during the formal dinner, when Charles was called upon to make brief remarks to the assembled guests. His speech was elegant and gracious, touching on themes of tradition, continuity, and the importance of relationships that bridge different backgrounds and experiences. While he didn't mention Camilla specifically, the implications of his words in the context of their public debut were unmistakable. When he concluded his remarks, Charles raised his glass in a toast to new beginnings built upon lasting foundations. His eyes met Camilla's across the room as he spoke these words, creating a moment of intimate connection despite the public setting. Later that evening, as they stood together on a palace balcony overlooking the illuminated gardens, Charles and Camilla reflected on the significance of what they had accomplished. "I believe we can safely say that went extremely well," Charles observed with satisfaction. "You were absolutely magnificent tonight. I couldn't be prouder of how you handled yourself." "Thank you," Camilla replied, feeling genuine relief and accomplishment. "I must admit, there were moments when I felt overwhelmed by the significance of it all. But having you beside me made all the difference." Charles took her hands in his expression serious yet tender. "Camilla, what we've built together over these past months has exceeded my most optimistic hopes. You've brought something into my life that I didn't even realize I was missing." "And what is that?" she asked softly. "Complete compatibility," he replied without hesitation. "Someone who understands both my public responsibilities and my private passions. Someone who challenges me intellectually while offering emotional support. Someone who brings out the best in me while accepting my flaws." The declaration was profound, representing the culmination of months of growing intimacy and mutual discovery. Camilla felt tears prick her eyes as she absorbed the full meaning of his words. "I feel exactly the same way," she assured him. "This relationship has transformed my entire understanding of what's possible between two people." As they stood together on the balcony, the pearl necklace catching the light from the palace windows, both understood that they had reached a pivotal moment. The public debut had been successful, the royal family's acceptance was evident, and their personal connection continued to deepen with each passing day. The bold choice to wear Diana's necklace that evening at the garden party had indeed changed everything, setting in motion a sequence of events that had led to this moment of triumph and recognition. What had begun as an impulsive gesture of confidence had evolved into a love story that would reshape both their lives. Looking toward the future, Charles and Camilla saw endless possibilities stretching before them. Their relationship had proven strong enough to withstand public scrutiny and complex family dynamics. They had discovered in each other not just romantic compatibility, but true partnership in facing life's challenges and opportunities. The pearl necklace would continue to hold special significance in their shared history, a tangible reminder of the moment when fate, courage, and mutual attraction converged to create something beautiful and lasting. From that first bold statement at a garden party to this triumphant public debut, the pearls had witnessed the transformation of two separate lives into one unified future. As they prepared to leave St. James's Palace that evening, both Charles and Camilla understood that they had successfully navigated the most challenging phase of their relationship's public emergence. The foundation was now solid, the acceptance secured, and the path forward clear. The pearl necklace had served its purpose magnificently, but the real treasure they had discovered was each other.